Welcome to Straight from the Training Ground, sponsored by Uno Zero, makers of the most comfortable cleats in the game. All boots handmade in Italy. They offer free shipping and returns in the U.S. Use code SFTTG10 for 10% discount on all orders. Hello and welcome to another edition of Straight from the Training Ground, the podcast we share our love for the beautiful game and the people out in the community doing beautiful things. And we're very honored and happy to have with us Brian Maisonneuve, U.S. soccer legend. He is a Hermann Award winner at the Indiana University, played in the 1996 Olympics, one of the founding fathers of MLS back in the 1996 Columbus Crew team, where he had a long, successful career, played in the 1998 World Cup in France. He's also coached with the men's national team at the youth levels, coached at Louisville, been an assistant at Indiana University, where he helped win a national championship, and currently the men's head coach at Ohio State, where he's on the road right now with the team. So, Brian, very happy to have you join us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad to have you. So before we get into some of those other things, tell everybody a little about when you grew up in Michigan, in the Michigan area, and growing up back then, how did you get involved with soccer? When did you fall in love with it?
Yeah, life was a lot different back then, but grew up in the Detroit area. I had a couple neighbors that actually played soccer. They were a little bit older than me. Really looked up to them. They got involved with the game. I mean, Detroit was a pretty good area. There were just different groups and pockets that played, and they were playing for one of the local teams, and so they would play out in front in the street. I played all sports growing up, but at about 5 years old, I grabbed the soccer ball and just. It was different than all other sports because you use your feet. So I fell in love with it. And then my sister played, and both my sister and I played growing up. Mom and dad never had anything to do with it, didn't know anything about the game, but just brought me to and from practice and games and all that. So it was honestly love at first sight, just in terms of the first time I touched the ball. I really enjoyed having a ball at your feet.
And you did say you played multiple sports though growing up. I mean, I always think that's interesting.
Yeah, played all of them. I loved them all. I mean, I loved playing hoops. Played basketball through middle school. When I got into high school, it was just a lot. But I played like intramurals in high school, and I love playing basketball. But played football, not organized football or hockey, all kind of on the streets. We played a lot of street football, a lot of pond hockey. Played baseball growing up. I played all the sports.
That's great. I know you're an incredibly humble person, but as an athlete along the way, was there any certain moment or anything where you remember just yourself where, it started to click and you really got some confidence and thought you could, that you could play at a pretty high level, or that you could even maybe be a professional someday?
That there was never like a specific moment. I would probably just say it was a love for the game that really drove me to focus on soccer and to say, you know what, I want to do this for a living. Now, at 14, 15, 16, I think everybody says that. But I did love the game, and I probably I did practice more than my other buddies who love the game. And there was just, there was a love for it that, it wasn't a game or, a certain coach had said, listen, Mays, you could maybe do this for a living. It was like, this is what I love to do. And I really didn't want to have a fallback plan. I just wanted to go for it.
That's great. So now back then, obviously, what was the youth landscape like? It was a lot different, obviously, with club and youth soccer and things. So what was that like where you grew up?
Yeah, much different. I mean, the spring and the fall season were 9 weeks, maybe 10 weeks. We trained on Tuesdays and Thursdays, played on Saturdays, basically had the summers off. And then back at it in the fall, pretty much the same thing, 9 to 10 weeks and train twice a week. And then back in Detroit, we did play indoor. We usually had a session or two of indoor, but that was like once a week. You didn't even train. You just played on the weekends. So a lot of it was what I did, or what me and my buddies did. We played a lot of basement soccer in the winter. And our basement wasn't much bigger than a small garage, but we made it work, whether my parents liked it or not. Yeah. And then during the summer, we did a lot of street soccer at the parks, and anytime I could play, you jumped in and played with your buddies, or go up to the park and just have some fun with the ball with two or three of your buddies. So a lot more was on the player than organized soccer, if that makes sense.
Intrinsic, yes.
Yep.
A lot more, yeah. So you came along at an interesting time, I think, 1996, when the Columbus Crew started, MLS was just starting. How was that process when you were coming through? You played at Indiana, as we said, had a great career. How was that process like? Did you hear rumblings of a league starting? Did you really think that would, how did you learn about that? And then how did you get involved with the Crew?
Yeah. So I graduated in 94 was the last year that I played at IU. And we were getting ready for the 96 Olympics. So we knew once the league had already said, okay, we're going to have a league. I think I signed with the league beginning in 95, maybe in the middle of 95 is when I signed with the league. And I was training with our Olympic team. Okay. So we did a residency program. So when I was done in 94, I actually went to the Pan American Games beginning in 95, in January 95, tore my ACL for the first time at the beginning of January. So then I came back and did some rehab on my own. And then I was actually cleared to play by summertime. I was cleared in about 3.5, 4 months to play. And then I played in the World University Games over the summer. And then I went to residency with the 23s, which was preparing for the 96 96 Olympics. And that was in the fall of 95. So we went down to Chula Vista at the Olympic Training Center and they moved us down there. And there was, I think, maybe 25 of us down there. And that was kind of leading into the start so it was an interesting time. That was leading into the first year of MLS. So the league started in 96. I was in residency with the Olympic team, even at the beginning. So we were at Chula Vista, the end of 95, the beginning of 96. When the team was named, we actually went out to DC because Bruce Arena was our head coach. He was doing DC United and the Olympic team. So the residency was out at DC United's training facility. And that was the beginning of the league. So when the league started, the first 4 games, if you were at residency with the Olympic team, you went back to your MLS teams, played in those games, or at least the teams had options to bring you in if they wanted to. And then after that first month of the league, we were full-time with the Olympic team, preparing for the summer games in 96. And then right after the summer games, we bounced back basically for the playoff push for that first year of MLS. So 96 was an exciting year, residency with the Olympic team. The league was starting. I got to play some games with the Crew, then full-time with the Olympics, played in the Olympics, and then bounced back to the Crew for the playoff push in 96, which was great. I got back for, I think, the last 12 games, and we had to win 9 of our last 10 to make the playoffs, and we did, which was great.
That's incredible, man. Wow. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I'm glad you mentioned how the chaos, a little bit of international versus club soccer as a player. So what were the early days of MLS like? You and I both know that it's a lot different now. There weren't a lot of soccer specific stadiums back then. There weren't Messi and Beckham necessarily. As a player, what was it like a little bit?
It was much, much different. I sound like I am an old man, but I sound like an older man saying, back in our day. But it was, with the Crew, our first couple games were at Ohio Stadium, in a 100,000 seat stadium. Now, they did an unbelievable job of kind of sectioning it off and still created a really nice, intimate setting. And the games were a lot of fun. But we trained on the south side of the football stadium and where the intramural teams trained. And sometimes you had to kick people off saying, we got training here. And the students were playing, ultimate Frisbee or whatever. So it was much different. When the Crew built their first training facility, that was one of the first ones in the league. And then obviously when the stadium was built, historic Crew Stadium, when that was built, that was fantastic. But even our old training ground was so much different than what you see now. And we were really fortunate to have our own training facility. We were one of the first ones, like I said. So the league was much, much different. But, we were young. I was 23 years old. I didn't know better. I'm getting paid to play the game I love. So I was like, whatever we got to do. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't change it for the world. It was so much fun. We got to know the fans in a really unique way. because we were doing appearance after appearance, and you didn't get paid for them like you do nowadays.
Yeah.
They're in your contracts. I mean, we just did them because we wanted to promote the game, but it was just so. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and like I said, I wouldn't change it.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's got to be kind of cool to know that you were part of that at the beginning stages, and to see the growth of MLS now, obviously. So moving on to the international stuff. Obviously, probably the highest honor you could ever dream of is to play in a World Cup to represent your country. I think any soccer player would, dreams of that. What was that like? Can you explain to people, like, what is that like? You were able to play in the '98 World Cup in
Yeah.
France. What is it like to play in a World Cup?
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know if I can say anything to quite explain it. I mean, both the Olympics and the World Cup were two dreams as a kid. Um, excuse me, and to play in the Olympics and your home soil was really, really cool. I mean, I can say our first game against Argentina, it was in front of 96,000 people. And I mean, I just got done playing in the College Cup final in front of 12,000. And then, a couple of years later, now I'm in front of 96,000 people. And it was amazing. And they're chanting USA, USA, USA. I mean, it was awesome. But like you said, the prestige of playing in the World Cup, I mean, I remember I started against Germany in our first game. We ended up losing 2-0, but I was warming up, and across the field was Jurgen Klinsmann. Lothar Matthäus. I mean, these were guys that I watched growing up, and I actually had posters of them in my room. And now I'm playing against them on the other side of the field, and it was really surreal and really neat. Now, once the whistle blew, it didn't matter if I was playing against them or my buddies, growing up, because once the whistle blows, it's just a game of soccer. But it was really cool being on that stage, and just you could feel the energy, you could feel everything about it. It was great.
That's amazing, man. So, were you able? I mean, I'm just curious. In that moment, are you able to, not necessarily in the game, but during the World Cup for the few weeks while it's going on, were you able to enjoy it at all? Is it just a whirlwind? Is it something that takes a long time to kind of sink in?
Yeah, I would say it's the last thing. I mean, I did enjoy it while I was there, don't get me wrong, but now when I
Yeah.
look back at it and you watch the World Cup games and you follow it, and um, to when you go to bed at night, you're like, man, I was part of that. It does probably take some time to really sink in, because at the moment, like I said, it's I'm playing in MLS, you're playing in the World Cup, you're playing
Yeah.
in the Olympics. I mean, it's all great, and you do appreciate it, and you do sit back, and um, you're so excited to have that experience. But it is, for me at least, it's years later that when you sit back and you're like, man, I was a part of that. It's pretty special.
Yeah. So then, and moving on then into your coaching career, you helped a little bit with the national team at the youth levels.
Yeah.
So you have some experience there. You were an assistant at Louisville. You were assistant for a long time at Indiana, and now currently the men's head coach at Ohio State. Moving into transitioning as a coach and coaching for as long as you have now. Who are some major influences you've had? Now that you're a little older, you feel like that have,
Yeah.
as a coach, that have helped you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a ton. I've been blessed, absolutely blessed with being around really good coaches and really good people that help me as a player for sure from a coaching standpoint. But now when I look back at my coaching style, and I know I'm taking bits and pieces from those guys. So I mean, just for instance, my high school coach, Terry Mukhtar, he's one of the best high school coaches in the state of Michigan ever, if not the best. And I was around that for 4 years, and then I transitioned to Indiana University, where Poppy Eggs or Jerry
Yeah.
Yeagley. I mean, he's the godfather of college soccer. I mean, he's the best of the best when it comes to. So I was able to be part of that and learn from him. And then the Olympics, Bruce Arena. People, you could argue he's one of the best American coaches across college. The pros, DC United, and everything that he's done. And I was able to learn from him. Bob Bradley was around DC United and the 23s as well. Another great coach. I mean, and then even like my first coaching stint when I retired in 2005, and I'm lucky enough to get hired by the U17s with what was at the time our residency program, and John Hackworth hired me. And for my first coaching job was down at the residency program. And I joke around working for U.S. Soccer for those 3.5, 4 years. I felt like it was 20 years of experience because I got to learn under John Hackworth, who, again, is one of my mentors. And, Keith Falk was down there, Raul Diaz-Arce, Timmy Mulqueen, all these guys, because the residency program, we could all pick each other's brains. And, we were down in Bradenton, and then the MLS is doing preseason down there, and national teams are coming down there. So you're picking everybody's brain. So, I like I said, that 3.5 years felt like 20 years of experience because it was just all soccer. And I was really fortunate with that. So, God's put me in some incredible places around some incredible people. And, I named a few coaches that have definitely influenced me as a coach. But I know there are many, many more as well.
And then you recently last summer were able to take the men's team from Ohio State as a coach to the UK on a little off-season trip. You played some teams over there, some Premier League teams. What do you see now as a coach? You have a lot more experience now as a player and a coach. What did you see? What are some similarities or differences you think of from the Division I college men's player to some of those guys that you faced?
Yeah. I mean, we went down there and we did really, really well. We had 3 games in 6 days and played. We didn't actually play the youth teams. We played like the reserves, which was a great experience for our guys. And we did really well. We ended up 1-1-1, played some good soccer, even though we played 3 games in 6 days. But the professionalism, kind of what, we were talking about with the beginning of MLS, it was just different. Now the leagues come so far. And it's great to see because you do get to compare some of the, even though we didn't actually get to see the youth teams, but you see the facilities and you talk to the coaches and you see how far the leagues come. I mean, the EPL is considered the best league in the world. And, I'm very excited and proud of where the MLS is right now. Am I going to say we're the EPL? No, but the growth and where we're at as a league in this world, we're not far off. So it was great to see and compare facilities, even just talking tactics and where we're at from a league standpoint, but also from the international game to be able to just to compare and contrast. It was a great learning experience, but I'll tell you what, I truly believe we are. I mean, we're one of the best of the best now. I mean, we've gotten to a really good point in terms of soccer across the world.
That's great.
I'm a little bit biased because I love the MLS and I love soccer here in the U.S. for sure.
No, that's great to hear. But I think you have a great vantage point. You've seen those things as a player, You've seen it develop, and then as a coach, you're taking some of your boys who are at Division I college level, putting them out there on the pitch against those guys to see how they measure up. So you have a great vantage point for that. Which leads me to my next question. And last one, we'll get you out of here. I know you're on the road right now with the team, so really appreciate it. Recently, within the last week or so, the U.S. men's national team has been in the news quite a lot since the summer. And then recently, within about the last week or so, U.S. Soccer officially named Mauricio Pochettino as the men's national team coach. And I think for the casual sports fan out there, 2 years away for a World Cup sounds like a long time, but, you alluded to a little bit already. Those international windows and going back and meeting up with the national team. I think when I looked last, there's about 8 or 9 maybe international windows total between now and the next World Cup. So in your experiences, you played in a World Cup and being around a national team as a player and a coach and knowing how those things work, do you feel like is that enough time to really create much of a change as a coach, whether it's the dynamics of a group, tactically, the culture?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. First of all, I think Greg Berhalter, our the previous coach, I thought he did a really good job of not only the success he had in the World Cup, but where he took the team and the program. And again, it's a lot of familiar faces, but I know Pochettino will add or will kind of put his twist on it. But I thought Greg has done a really good job and. Now that Pochettino's taken over, I do think he can impact it. Now, like you said, you think 2 years, man, that's a lot. But like you said, you only get together for different periods of time, and not only that is everybody comes from different environments, different tactical way that their club team does it. So you got to get everybody on the same page, playing together. And some guys like to play this way, some guys like to play that way. So, you got to get the buy-in of the group to play however he wants to play. So, I mean, he does have some work to do, but I mean, I'm really excited about the hire. I think he'll do a really good job. But he's got some work to do, just getting everybody on his page and the way he'll look at what he sees as the strength of the player pool. And then he's got to figure out how he wants to play with that player pool. Because, I mean, if our player pool is this and he wants to play this style, but it doesn't match it, then sometimes, do you find different players or do you change the way you actually want to play? So, I mean, all that comes into, and that's why he's hired and he's been really successful putting teams together. So I'm really excited about it. And I think we do have a good player pool, and I think he'll do a good job, and he's got the time to do it, but he's got some work to do too. No matter what the situation was, just getting everybody, like I said, on the same page for a World Cup is not an easy job.
Yeah, and I know I said it was the last question. I'm just going to add on to that one real quick. So explain to everyone out there, as a player, you're only together really for like maybe a week when you get called in. You have a few training sessions, typically 1 or 2 friendlies. How does that work, during a normal window?
Yeah, I mean, when you get together?
Yeah, like during your club season, they call you in. He's only going to have
a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most. I mean, it's a lot of video. It's a lot of just studying of how you want to play, a lot of walkthroughs, because, physically you can only do so much when you're playing. Usually you play 2 or 3 games in that window, and they're 3 to 4 days apart. Not only that, is he's evaluating new guys. So new guys go into the play. So not only is he getting everybody on the same page, he's evaluating. So, I mean, it's a busy 2 to 3 weeks, and the prep that you have to do it before, and then the recap at the end. I mean, it takes some time. So, I mean, it's exciting though, when you bring a new group in. I know with the 17, well, we had the 17s in residency, but I was assistant coach for our U20s with Thomas Rongen, and we would bring in guys from all over the world, and then domestically from different teams, and you got to get them on that same page. So whether it's video, whether it's walkthroughs, whether it's discussions, whether it's, your questions and answers, just sitting down with different guys individually of, what do you see? How do you, all those conversations in that 2 weeks, you're busy for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing insight. Really appreciate it. And like I said, I know you're on the road, you're traveling with the team, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us here. Again, Brian Maisonneuve, best of luck with you and the Ohio State men's team for the rest of the season. And we really appreciate everything today. So thanks a lot, and keep up the great work at Ohio State.
Great. Well, like I said, thanks so much for the invite.
Absolutely. Thanks.